Today, let's discuss the Ten Commandments and Yahweh God from an anthropological perspective. In the Ten Commandments, there's the verse that says, "Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not kill." Yet when we look at the Bible, we see that the Almighty Yahweh God commanded the Israelites, when entering Canaan, to utterly destroy every remaining people there, leaving none alive. The Ten Commandments were delivered to Moses by Yahweh God on Mount Sinai. The Ten Commandments were written by God's finger on 2 stone tablets, front and back, commanding obedience and given to Moses. As you likely know from the Bible, Moses saw the Israelites worshiping foreign gods, descended from Mount Sinai, and threw the first set of tablets down, shattering them. God then made a second set of stone tablets. To this day, no one has seen the Ten Commandments. This is because, as the Bible states, there is an ark designed to hold these stone tablets, the Ark of the Covenant, also called the Ark in English. After Moses' time, the tablets were always preserved within this ark, carried by men using poles. This was because anyone touching the ark directly would die instantly from shock. The Bible details how to construct the ark exactly as God commanded. Some scholars suggest that if built precisely according to those instructions, a massive electrical current would flow within it. However, due to the immense amount of gold required, no one has ever built it exactly as described in the Bible, so we cannot know for certain. Later, around 9 to 80 BC, Solomon built his palace and stored it in the palace temple. Then, in 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, destroyed the kingdom of Judah, burned Solomon's palace to the ground, and completely destroyed it. The Ten Commandments, which had been well preserved until then, disappeared along with the Ark of the Covenant. Even today, many people strive to find them. The well-known movie starring Harrison Ford, Raiders of the Lost Ark, is based on various theories about finding the Lost Ark. The most prominent theory suggests the temple priests hid it in underground caves beneath the palace or a secret location, or that it was later moved to Egypt or Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims that Menelik I, the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, visited Jerusalem as an adult and secretly brought the Ark back with him to Ethiopia, and secretly brought the Ark of the Covenant back with him to Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims it is still located in the ancient city of Aksum, in the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia, specifically in the Church of St. Mary of Zion. This seems like a far-fetched story. Nevertheless, it remains a site, visited by many pilgrims each year. This is because the Ark of the Covenant is a unique artifact, the only one of its kind in this world, given by God to humanity as a testament. But look at the Ten Commandments. There's the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill." Thou shalt not kill. Yet if we look at the Bible, specifically 1 Samuel 15:15, what does it say? It says to kill everything: men, women, children, infants, cattle, sheep, camels, donkeys, everything. But Yahweh God commands this mass killing, even though the Ten Commandments say, "Thou shalt not kill." This seems a bit inconsistent, doesn't it? It doesn't quite make sense. The reason is, from an anthropological perspective, the God of the Old Testament is the ancestral God for the Jews. In other words, he is the God for the Jewish people. Therefore, the Ten Commandments apply only to the Jews, not to other nations. That is, Yahweh is the ancestral God of the Jewish people, and other nations are completely irrelevant. Therefore, killing members of other nations is not an issue. However, when we read the Bible further, the New Testament says to keep the Ten Commandments and also to love your neighbor and love your enemy. Yet, the God in the New Testament is the same God as Jesus. While Yahweh and Jehovah are the same God, for convenience, I will distinguish them. For reference, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, and the New Testament in Greek. Yahweh is Hebrew, so I'll separate him as the ancestral God of the Jews. And Jehovah is Greek, so I'll separate him as the Trinity God Jesus. This is because the God of the New Testament, Yahweh, is Jesus plus Yahweh God plus the Holy Spirit united together. Therefore, Yahweh God is the Trinity God Jesus. However, the Jews neither believe in this Trinity nor accept Jesus as the Messiah. They still believe a Messiah solely for the Jews will appear someday. Now, this command to love Jesus' enemies is sometimes treated as if Yahweh God spoke it, equating it with other biblical statements. But Yahweh never said such a thing. In other words, this confusion arises from thinking Yahweh God and the Trinity Jesus God are the same. Many people learn this way when they go to church or believe in God. However, strictly speaking, there is a need to distinguish to some extent between Yahweh God and the Trinity God Jesus. As mentioned earlier, Yahweh God is the ancestral God of the Israelite people, and Jesus is the one who created the new Christian civilization. That is, all people of the Christian civilization who believe in Jesus must keep not only the 10 Commandments, but also the commandments spoken by Jesus. Jesus' words, "Love your neighbor and love your enemies," are commandments that every Christian must keep. Jews do not need to keep them because they are not Christians. I wish to clarify that since we are discussing culture between nations from an anthropological perspective, this has absolutely no connection to theology or religious studies. In the Old Testament, when Yahweh commanded, "You shall utterly destroy all your enemies," Yahweh was the monotheistic God of the Jews, their ancestral deity. Therefore, since other nations not belonging to the Jewish people were unrelated to the 10 Commandments, it was permissible to kill them. This is to emphasize that there is a distinction between the God of the New Testament and the God of the Old Testament. After Jesus' death, around 330 AD during the reign of Emperor Constantine, Christianity became the state religion of Rome. At that time, Rome was the absolute superpower ruling all of Europe. Thus, Roman Catholicism spread throughout Europe, and Christianity itself developed tremendously. Initially, believers were divided between those who denied the doctrine of the Trinity and those who accepted it. However, once it became the state religion of Rome, this Trinity was recognized as a complete and perfect doctrine. Consequently, those who opposed this doctrine were labeled heretics, excommunicated, and condemned. Ultimately, as the Trinity, doctrine was formally adopted as Christian doctrine. Yahweh God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit became 3 distinct persons of one God. And Jesus' commandment, the New Testament, spread throughout all humanity. Love your neighbor is a commandment that applies even to people of other nations, provided they are fellow Christians. This image depicts the shape of the earth as believed by the ancient Hebrews, flat, supported by pillars beneath it. Yet as early as 600 BCE, 2,600 years ago, Thales, an ancient Greek astronomer, already knew the earth was round, revolved around the sun, and that the moon orbited the earth, and even predicted solar eclipses. Because of the false model of the earth that the Jews believed in, whenever outstanding scholars spoke the truth, they faced religious trials and suffered misfortune. God must be hoping that we learn more about the cosmic order He created and the origin of our humanity, so we can draw closer to Him.